Hello YouTube viewers, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tips, and in this video this will be part 2 of the jeweler's filings and clippings process that I'm doing. I got started on that in part 1, and then I had a problem with my fume hood. I've got the fume hood problem resolved. It's been running continuously for the last week, so it's set up now the way I want it to be, and now we can get busy doing some refining. Before I get started with that, someone asked about this copper ring that I had on my table over here. What this is a piece of copper strap. It's 50 foot long, 2 inches wide, and about 22 thousandths of an inch thick, and it's perfect for cementing silver out of those silver solutions that I have out there. And I paid about 50 bucks for this. This will last me a good 6-8 months at least. And I also have this. I want to show you. This I found this on Craigslist. It is some copper tubing, 3/4 inch copper tubing. I paid $65 for it, and this will last me a good year. It's 60 foot section of 3/4 inch thick-walled copper tubing. What I'll do is I'll cut that into lengths and then cut it open and flatten it out and use this to cement out the silver out of my silver solutions. So people were asking about that, so I figured I'd go ahead and show that. Okay, let's get busy right now. Part 2 of the jeweler's filings and clippings video. Okay, to get started here, I've weighed the empty bowl that I'm going to use to put the material in. It's 686.5 grams. Up here we have the incinerated material from part 1 of the video. And what I'm going to do is transfer this down into our smaller tray here, and then weigh it again so we can see how much material we've got to start with, so we can calculate a yield. And it looks like we have 846.6 grams there. 846.6 minus 686.5 equals, so we got 160.1 grams of material, 160.1 grams of incinerated material here to work with. Okay, I've got a magnet here inside of a plastic bag. I'm just going to go through the material and pick anything that's magnetic up, put it in this dish over here out of the way for right now. There's going to be like metal staples, pieces of saw blade from the jeweler, and I just want to get that out of the way before we put it in the metal strainer up there, because the saw blades are so thin they'll tend to drop through and go right through the metal the mesh screen up there. So I'm going to go through and get all the magnetic stuff that I can out of here with this magnet. I use a plastic bag because if you don't and you're sitting there trying to pick everything off the magnet with the plastic bag, you can just take the magnet out of the plastic bag, and anything magnetic that's clinging to the magnet will drop off. Just quickly go through it here. Remember too that some of these pieces of gold will have a magnetic spring in them, so you got to go through this material once we get it all sifted out here. And let me show you how this works here. Just reach down into the plastic bag, grab the magnet, and then you can pull the magnet away from the plastic, and it just falls off in there for you, like so. that. I want to get all this stuff out of here, all this magnetic material. Like I was saying earlier, some of the gold catches have steel springs in them, and they will attract to the magnet. So you got to go through this stuff here and get those back out of there, because they will have gold in them. Then we'll have to take those apart and get the springs out of there. I think that pretty much does it for this. See, the magnet doesn't have a bunch of junk on it now. Okay, now we're going to bring the beaker up here with our screen in it, and I'm going to transfer the material carefully into this screen, and try to get all the finely divided material through the screen and into the bottom of the beaker there. We want to catch any big pieces, because what we're going to do is take the big pieces, the clippings, pieces of karat gold, and we're going to put those in a melt dish, melt them into a button, and then we'll determine the carat of gold that the button is once I get it all alloyed together, and then we'll inquart that button with silver, and then refine it that way, separate from the filings. Filings and the clippings get processed separately here. Finely divided material down here inside the beaker, sifted out of the fine screen here. Now what we'll do is we'll set this off to the side, and I'm going to pour this material back in here. I'm going to take it indoors, and I'm going to sort through all this and get all the stones and pieces of karat gold out so we can melt them into a button. Okay, now what we do is I'm picking through by hand, putting all the stones that I find in this container, putting all the karat metal that I find, or pieces of gold or silver, into this container, and then any junk goes in this container. And I just sit here and pick through this by hand until I get all this stuff classified and separated before we move to the next step. I've spent about an hour picking through all this material here, and I've got most of the big pieces of clippings out of here and over here in this dish. This is all going to be karat gold, silver, maybe a little bit of platinum clippings, but mostly karat gold. Here's the stones that I was able to pick out of there and save those. I'll give those back to the jeweler. And this is some of the junk that I found in there. I just took it out and put it in this little container here, and I'll get rid of it. Here's the stuff that we separated with a magnet earlier. I'm going to go out and pour this through the screen to get that fine stuff down in the beaker, and then I'll throw the the pieces of magnetic material away. So let's go out in the shop now. I'm going to put this through the mortar and pestle and grind this up and put it through the screen. Put this through the screen, then we'll come back in and finish this up, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, here's the magnetic material that we got out. It has a little bit of powdered material in it. What I want to do with this is I'm going to pour this through the screen now and then get the magnetic material out of there. And I want to save that powdered stuff, though. It's going to have some material, some gold in it. Okay, now I'm going to take and put this stuff in this mortar and pestle and grind it up a little bit. See if we can get a little bit more material off of it. Pour it through the strainer there. Got most of the material off of this magnetic stuff. I'm going to grind it one more time. See them saw blades? I want to come through that screen. I'm going to grind this up one more time. Send it back through the wire mesh there. And we'll take this in and pick through it. And get any good material out. And we'll throw away the any scrap stuff that's steel or iron that we don't want in our batch here. Alright, that's good enough for now. What I'll do is put this right back in here. Now what we want to do is get this material here into the mortar and pestle, grind it up again, get it real ground up real fine so it'll pass through our screen, and then we'll go back in and look at this material. It's probably going to have a little bit more carat stuff in it that we can pick out. Just keep doing this over and over until we get it down to the as fine a state as we can, and then start processing this stuff with the acids. Grind this up again. Don't want to go too hard with this because there may be some stuff in here that can be saved and given back to the jeweler. Let's go ahead and pour this through the screen here. Alright, I think we've got just about all we can out of there. I'm going to put it back into our dish here. And we'll go in and take a look at this stuff and see exactly what we got here. This is our waste, and this has still got some good stuff in it. I'm going to pick through this now and try to get it all sorted out into here. Okay, I'm going to take my magnet here and draw all this stuff up on the side. And then see if I can pick it off of there into our scrap pile over here. Here's our scrap stuff that's no good. These are just pieces of saw blade, staples, iron stuff that's not precious metals. I'm going to get it out of here and get it separated from the rest of the batch. I've got all the waste steel stuff in here. We'll set this aside. This is some stuff that was left over in with the steel scrap, the magnetic stuff, and I'm going to add this right into the rest of my batch. And then what I'm going to do now is slowly go through this and try to get as many big pieces of carrot scrap as I can into this container over here. Alright, here we go. Here's all the carrot stuff that we got in the container here. Here's all our scrap steel and stuff that's not precious metals separated out. Got some stones here. I'll give these back to the jeweler. He may be able to use those in some jewelry repairs. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out. This is all we got left. Take this out and run it through that mortar and pestle one time. Put it through the screen, and then I'll add the pieces. What this is mostly solder chips. And what I'll do is those little bitty squares of metal are solder that the jeweler uses to do repairs. And once I get the black pieces crushed through the screen out there, I'll pour this in with this, and then we'll melt this up into a button and make a nice alloy, and then do a test on it to see what carat the gold is, so we can figure out how much silver to add to inquart it. Okay, we're going to take and put this material into the mortar and pestle here and grind it up once more real good. Get any kind of finely divided powdered material off of there and add it to the beaker. I'm going to sweep the cardboard here and see if we can get most of this swept up in here. Things we spilled. Now we're going to grind this up real good. And then once I get this ground up real good, I'm going to run this through the strainer. And then the little pieces of carat gold solder chips and then the other pieces of carat gold here, I'm going to add it to the other carat gold that we've already separated out. And refine this as two separate batches, and then we'll combine them at the end to get one solid piece of metal out of here. Let's put this through the screen now. I think this part's done here. Alright, here we go. This is the stuff that we're going to put in with the carat gold. And this here we'll process separately. It's finely divided powder down there. You should just be able to hit this with some nitric acid and start extracting the silver and palladium out of this. Okay, we've got our material up here in a finely divided state. What I'm going to do is add distilled water here to about the 200 milliliter level or so. And then I'm going to add in about 50 milliliters of concentrated nitric acid here. We're going to cover this up and put it up on the heat and start getting any silver and palladium that's in here out of that powdered material. this up, move it up here on the heat, and start extracting the silver and palladium. Palladium is the only one of the 6 sister metals in the platinum group that is soluble in nitric acid. And so these nitric acid treatments that we're doing right here will extract silver and palladium out of this powdered material. We want to do that so that when we put aqua regia on this material to dissolve the gold, we don't want silver in there, because the silver will react with the hydrochloric acid in the aqua regia, form silver chloride, and cause problems for us later in the process. Okay, while we have the nitric treatment of the powdered material going on out there, I'm going to add this pieces of carat scrap and silver, and there might be some platinum in here. I'm going to add that to a melt dish. This here is going to be all those little finely cut pieces of solder that the jeweler uses. We're going to add that into this jar here. And then what we'll do is we're going to take this out, put it on the melt dish out here, and melt this into a button, and stir it with a graphite rod so that we can get a good alloy on it, and then we'll test the button with acid, see what kind of carat of gold we end up with here, and go from there. I've got the finely divided material up there heating up with some dilute nitric, and while that's going on, what I'm going to do is melt this carat scrap. These are clippings and pieces that the jeweler has cut off of jewelry while he does his repair. We're going to melt this up into a button now. This footage is speeded up 8 times normal speed, and you'll see here I use a graphite rod to stir the molten metal to get a nice alloy. Make sure everything gets mixed up real well in that melt dish. This is 4 times normal speed, and that metal is taking a little bit longer than I'm used to seeing to solidify here. Here's our button of carat stuff that we picked out of the jeweler's waste. Weigh this up now. We got 65.5 grams. Don't know what the carat is yet. We're going to have to test this, and we'll do that right now. Alright, I've got a testing stone here. I've got some 14K gold testing acid. I've got some needles here. And I'm going to take the 10K needle here, and I'm going to rub a streak right here. On the other side of that, I'm going to rub a 14K streak. And then right in the middle, I'm going to take our button and get some of it on the touchstone here. And then we're going to put some acid on this and watch and see what happens here. Alright, let's see if we can get a better angle on this. Light's kind of obscuring our view here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but Right now the test is looking like it's more of a 14K gold button that we just prepared. Okay, if you look at our test here, this is the 10K streak. This is our little button that we just melted in the middle. And over here is our 14K streak from one of our testing needles. These two look more alike than these two. So I'm going to lean towards this being a 14K button. And we're going to use that as our basis to inquart this button with silver. Here's our test after about 30 minutes of sitting in the acid there. The center streak is our button. The one on the right is 14K. The one on the left, which is just barely visible, is 10K. And you can see that our button is not quite 14K. It's closer to 10K. I'm going to call this a 10K button and inquart for the button being 10K gold. It's better to add too little than too much. If we add too much silver here, the button will fall apart, crumble into a powder, and make separating the solution from the gold very difficult. Okay, we've got a 65.5 gram button of the jeweler's clippings here that I melted up and stirred with a graphite rod to get a good alloy. I'm counting it as 10K gold. I multiply that by 0.635. I get 41.5 grams of silver to add, except I'm not going to add silver here. I'm going to inquart it with copper instead, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to give the jeweler credit for his silver that's in here. If I add silver, then I won't be able to tell how much of the silver is mine and how much is his, and so we're going to inquart with copper. I'm going to put 40.3 grams of copper in here and inquart this gold with copper. And then we're going to go ahead and treat this with nitric acid. Here's our jeweler's button. I've added some copper. And what we're going to do is we're going to inquart this with copper because I want to try to give the jeweler credit for his silver. If I add my silver, then I won't know how much to give him because I won't be able to determine how much he had in his scrap alone. So I'm using copper to inquart here. I'm going to dump off the tap water now. And one more time, I'm inquarting this as if it were 10K, lower than what I tested. It tested to be about 12K. But I'm going to inquart it for 10K because by adding less copper instead of more, there's less likelihood of the gold crumbling to a powder. If we put too much silver or copper in here to do this inquartation, then the gold will turn to a powder and it becomes hard to separate it from the liquid. So I'm using less copper rather than more. Also, I'm using copper here because I want to try to give the jeweler credit for his silver. If I added my own silver to do the inquartation, then I wouldn't know how much silver in there is his and how much of it that I added. But by using copper here, I can separate it and all the silver will be his because I didn't add any of my silver. So that's the reason I'm using copper, so I can give that jeweler credit for his silver. Alright, there's our inquarted gold, inquarted with copper. Alright, here's where we're at so far. This is our pieces of carat gold clippings from the jeweler's waste that I've inquarted with copper. And what I'm going to do is I've got some used dilute nitric acid here from previous refining. I'm going to pour that on here and we're going to start dissolving out the copper and the base metals out of this gold with this. I'm going to cover it up now and we're going to set it up here on our heating pad. I've got another heating pad set up over here. Now, over here, what we have is our jeweler's filings. And if you look down in the bottom down there, you'll be able to see, I don't know if you can see that or not on the camera, but we've got some filings accumulated down in the bottom there. Got a little bit of a light fume going on inside. So what I'm going to do now, I got a small beaker. I'm going to measure out about 20 milliliters of concentrated nitric acid here. And we're going to add that slowly to our hot solution and see if we got any kind of reaction going on in there with this acid addition. Alright, I'm going to add this real slow now. Let me put the lid on here. Just pour it down the side of the jar here. I don't see a big reaction there. That's 20 milliliters of concentrated nitric going in. And I didn't see a big, huge reaction. So I think anything that we're going to get to come out of solution in here is probably already out. We'll let this boil for a little bit longer. I put it on at 320. The time right now is 5:15, so it's been on there almost 2 hours boiling in the dilute nitric acid. We'll just leave it on there while we wait for this inquarted gold to be processed. This is the jeweler's filings. This is the jeweler's clippings that I've melted into a button, tested the carat, inquarted with copper, and now I'm using dilute nitric acid to remove the silver and the copper and the other base metals from the gold. Alright, the time is 5:50 and our solution in here, our filings, have become dehydrated, so I'm going to add a little bit of water here to rehydrate this reaction. This is the beaker that I just added the 20 milliliters of concentrated nitric acid to it. And I can see that I'm getting a lot of fume production there, so that means something's going on in here. But I was getting a little bit dehydrated, so I'm going to add here probably another 75 milliliters of distilled water to this. And then we'll just let this continue to boil. Time right now is just before 6:30. And what I'm going to do is the Inquarted gold over here has stopped reacting. So we're going to take and pour this off into a beaker over here. This will contain the copper that I added, plus the jeweler's silver. Alright, now we're going to put this back up on the heat. And I'm going to add some fresh acid to it. And we're going to continue this reaction. This is some more of the previously used dilute nitric acid going in on top of the Inquarted gold. It's been Inquarted with copper. We're going to continue this reaction. Our reaction back here has got a strong boil going. I don't see much fume production in there. So I'm going to measure out another 20 milliliters of concentrated nitric acid here and add it to this beaker full of the filings. Is about 7:35. It's been about an hour since we've added any fresh nitric to this Inquarted gold. I'm going to pour this off now into the container that I've designated for his silver. Hopefully the gold is sticking together, and it looks like it is for me. I've used copper to inquart this gold so that we could get the silver out and keep it separated and know how much silver we've got in there that the jeweler's scrap contained. If I had used silver in here to inquart the gold, then my silver would be commingled with the jeweler's, and we wouldn't know how much was his and how much was mine. So now I'm going to add a little bit of water here. Put it back on the heat. Now I'm going to add some nitric acid to that. And we're going to continue to extract out the copper and the base metals here with these hot dilute nitric acid treatments. Time now is 5 minutes to 9, and what we're going to do here is I'm going to just keep, this has got fumes in it, I'm just going to keep heating it up and let this go under that nitric acid. Keep it hydrated. And then over here, I'm going to change out our nitric. It's going to take more nitric acid to dissolve out the copper because, well, nitric acid takes more, or I mean, copper takes more nitric than silver does. So it's going to take a few more nitric acid treatments here to get all the copper out of our gold. But this should clean it up real good, better than silver, because then we won't have a bunch of silver chloride to worry about. It's about 100 milliliters of water. I'm going to add some more nitric acid now. And we'll just let this continue to boil with this nitric acid until that solution stays relatively clear. The time right now is about 10 minutes to 10, and it's getting late. I think what I'm going to do here is turn the heat off on this. I think we've got just about all we're going to get out of that batch. I'm going to add some distilled water here to dilute this down and let it cool off. And then on this over here, I'm just going to turn this off and let this cool down. As you can see, I don't know if you can see that on the camera there, but the solution has turned nice and light. You can see through it now, which tells me that most of the copper has been dissolved out of that gold, and it's pretty near pure gold now. So we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to turn the heat off on this. We're going to go in and get some rest, come back out, and do part 3. Okay, this will conclude part 2 of the Jeweler's Filings and Clippings video. In part 3, what we'll do is we'll take those metals that we've recovered from that scrap and refine it into absolutely pure gold metal. And plus we'll get the silver out and see how much silver was in that scrap. And I'd like to take the time here to thank those folks who have contributed to my PayPal account. I greatly appreciate those donations, and they go a long way to helping me and my family so that I can continue to make these refining videos. I really love doing this. It's really a passion of mine. And one other thing, a lot of people have contacted me about refining their material, and I really don't do that. This is my hobby, and I only refine the material that my wife and I find at yard sales and thrift stores. And the other thing is, some folks were contacting me through my eBay account, and eBay frowns on exchanging information over their messaging system. So it's probably best to contact me through the YouTube channel. I did add my email. If you go to my channel description, you'll see my email up there, and I will try to answer emails as I have time. So if you have questions about any of these processes, you can email me. And okay, coming up, we've got the electrolytic gold refining cell. I've got some platinum jewelry pieces that I want to refine and get some pure platinum metal. And also, I've got a whole bunch of silver cell filters out there. Probably a dozen, more than a dozen silver cell filters from the anode filter basket of the silver cell. And there's probably going to be some palladium in those slimes from those cells. So those 3 videos are coming up very soon. And I guess that will conclude the video, part 2 of the Jeweler's Filings and Clippings. Thanks for watching.